and welcome to a Draw Badly With Me review of Death Note 2017. This version of Death Note was directed by Adam Wingard, starring Nat Wolff as Light, Lakeith Stanfield as L, and of course Willem Dafoe as Ryuk himself. I recommend that even before watching this kind of review of the movie that you watch, my review of the trailer when it first came out, because that will kind of give you a good basis of what I think about the entire film as a entity, essentially. It's quite a short movie, I think, especially for the amount of content that it had. It's about 1 hour and 40 minutes long. Just considering that and how much happened in the anime, you would know that they probably had to change the story or cut some bits out, which is exactly what they did. The way they treated the story was, of course, very different from the anime in a lot of ways. The way they told the story was eventually a little bit detrimental to the actual core message of the anime itself, which basically had to do with kind of ethics and what justice is to different people. It obviously does get mentioned in the movie, but not to the extent that it would do in the anime, and how the audience is treated in the film, the 2017 Netflix version, and the anime is quite different. This is easily seen in this oversimplification of some of the characters. In fact, all of the characters are completely different to their counterparts in the anime, and it works for the film, but it doesn't work when comparing it to the original. I would say definitely watch it, because when I started watching the movie, I kind of got very angry and unhappy at some of the things, and I was scoffing a lot of the time, but some part way through I kind of started liking it, and that's because the movie changed enough to make it its own individual work. So even though the story is different and the characters are different, it still is inspired by the Death Note, and I think that is how people should consider it. It's a story that's inspired by the original Death Note. It is by no measure at all the actual original story. Having said that, this has been the spoiler-free version of it, and I highly recommend that you watch the movie before coming back to the rest of this video. If I see you again, then great! For the people that have stayed or don't care about spoilers or have already seen it, what do you think? Let me know down below, because I really liked it. Again, this would be for the way that they changed the story. The way they changed the characters and the way they changed the story really complement each other quite well. It's very easy to tell that this was made for a different audience because of the way that Ryuk is introduced in particular is taken very dramatically. In the anime, Light is obviously very startled, but he then, of course, says to Ryuk, "Oh, actually, I've been expecting you." And of course, the way he makes his first kill in the Death Note has nothing to do with Ryuk showing up and him actually helping Light write the name in the Death Note. Essentially, the Light in Netflix's version of Death Note writes his first name in the Death Note because Ryuk told him to. He doesn't necessarily make that decision completely independently or even at all by himself. He just is following orders, which kind of makes Ryuk throughout the entire film seem like the puppet master and Light's just a puppet. The original Death Note anime version, obviously Light was very in control of himself. In fact, he was in control of nearly the entire process that Kira was formed as the sort of maker of justice and whatnot. I think the way that L was introduced was quite a nice little nod to Japan in general. Really, it was quite impressive of Lakeith Stanfield to actually say his line in Japanese when we first meet him, which I think is very nice. They obviously kind of tried a little bit to appease the angry anime lovers by including that, but I don't know if they did a good enough job of it. Obviously, Lakeith Stanfield's take on L was much better than I thought it was going to be. But I did read an article that basically said he realized after a little while how passionate people were about this series, and so he decided to actually take it upon himself to watch the original anime himself. And he said that made him change the character a little bit, which I thought was very obvious when he goes up to the podium to speak to everybody and kind of taps the mic with his finger awkwardly. That was very well done, but there weren't enough moments like that in the entire movie that made L kind of the character that he is. And of course, the change in the story doesn't really allow the characters to kind of draw inspiration from the actual characters in the anime. This is most obvious when Light writes Watary's name in the Death Note, and then Watari is hypnotized by finding L's real name out in the orphanage where he was raised. This chain of events then leads L into essentially laying his cards completely out on the table, and that's where the confrontation comes from that I'm drawing right now, which I hope you like, and I really don't know what happened to L's face. I'm really sorry. Where this is a rational way to react to something if one of your best friends is missing, this essentially turns L from a calm, collected guy to somebody who is completely driven. He sends the police into Light's house with no real evidence apart from his gut and knowing that Light is Kira by just deciding. In the original version, obviously in the anime, that it's a meticulous process to prove who Kira is. But here, they go through a little bit of that just for the story. If anything, Mia is more Kira than Light is, and that's because she is protecting him and making more of the big decisions, like getting all the names of the FBI agents done, making sure that they didn't get back to L. So what they did is basically split Kira, the entity, into two different characters, one being Light, who thinks justice is what he's doing, and then the other is Mia, who is the driving force behind protecting Kira's identity and making sure that Kira can continue doing the things that he does. Unfortunately, what that does to the original story, and this one as well, is completely take away the games that L and Light play with each other to essentially prove who is the smartest and who will catch who first. The original anime, of course, uses that to explain the motivation behind each character and what they think justice is, and why that is as well. In the Netflix version, Light is more motivated to begin with by revenge and avenging his mother's death than he is with the concept of justice and that everybody deserves the same thing. That's more of an afterthought. The reason that L is trying to catch Light is quite easy to explain. It's simply that Light shouldn't be in any position to decide who lives and who dies based on what they've done in their lives. And that's L's motivation, which is pretty simple. It's what the motivation behind his dad joining up with him is as well. They still try and remind us that Light is very smart by the end, where he basically dictates through the Death Note using the people that he has been recommended online by the public to essentially save himself and make sure that he'll still be alive and still be in possession of the Death Note after the scene on the Ferris wheel. Sadly, that's only a reminder of how smart Light was in the actual original. You can see a contradiction in the characters in L as well, when after Watari has died and he's figured out that Mia had a page of the Death Note, without knowing any of the rules, he then proceeds to maybe write Light Turner's name down in it? Which is good that they left it ambiguous, but that only shows how far these characters are from their original counterparts. The real L, again, wouldn't ever use the Death Note himself because it contradicts his own ethics and the entire reason that he's chasing Light. Speaking of the rules of the Death Note, Light doesn't really seem like all that good a student if he wouldn't read the rules of such an important book. It's just I think, almost a plot hole, because it seems a bit ridiculous. So, having said that, that was what I thought of the movie and how it kind of compared to the original. Let me know what you thought down below, and hopefully you've enjoyed my terrible drawing of Elle and Light in the cafe from the from the movie. I'm so sorry about Elle's face. Oh my goodness. I'm learning to draw, by the way, if you can't tell. You can join me on these if you'd like, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you would like more videos once every 4 months, lol, then subscribe. Hopefully I'll have some more time to do these, but probably not, cause I'm a busy gal. Alrighty, bye!